In looking for different things about materials in my work, I'd like to start by looking at my grandmother's painting, which is on the left, and the materials she chose to employ. In this piece, she's just used oil paint, and she used to use a magnifying glass to look at old rotting wood and these sort of natural things. And then she made large abstract paintings on them. And one thing about oil paint is that it's one of the purest forms of color that you can use. Even as far as we've come with printing technology, we still can't really top the sheen and the luster and the beauty of oil paint. So if you're into beauty and looking to express that visually, oil paint is a pretty good decision. It's been around for a long time, but there's a reason why people still use it. So in these paintings, I'm also talking about the internet a lot, video game culture, digital culture, cyberpunk, these sort of things. And in these paintings, I was simply making landscapes based upon different video game screens, thinking about them more as impressionist paintings rather than some sort of fan art. And I liked the pixels and thought of them kind of as these large brush marks that would be made in impressionist paintings. So I've been looking at this comparison between the digital world and paint for quite some time. And obviously it's easiest to look at old video games like those that were with Atari and these sort of things, because these games simply had bigger pixels. So we associate those things with them more. In the painting on the top left here, I was doing what's called aleatoric painting, based upon John Cage and his methods of painting, or his methods of making art, were often involving chance and some sort of game. So I created a game involving a die, where I would throw the die, and based upon the number, it would give me a word, and then I'd look up the word, and then from that I'd get a Google image. And I did a series of paintings on that. This looks like it's some sort of plastic surgery, but I like this idea of giving up the responsibility for the painting to some other force, which John Cage used quite a bit. In the painting below, that was of an old text-based video game called Zork. And I did some paintings. A lot of these are, again, looking at the internet, looking at that sort of culture. It's kind of permeates everything now, but I've been painting this for quite some time. On the top left was this conspiracy about Bert being put into signs in protests which were occurring throughout the Middle East, and that the U.S. intelligence services was putting Bert from Bert and Ernie into these signs, kind of as a joke. And the bottom painting is this sort of American religion where you make up whatever type of spirituality you want that can help you in any way, chaos magic, and I made some paintings based upon that. Lately I've been looking at a lot of anatomical drawings, and since my paintings involve the body and flesh, so I've been looking at a lot of anatomy drawings and 3D anatomy renderings of organs and these sort of things. Started doing some biometric paintings. As you can see, they're pretty loose, and this is in the beginning of biometrics when there wasn't as many points as there is now again. So as biometrics just becomes able to see your entire face, and we can get a 3D rendering of our face perfectly now, these sort of paintings already become nostalgic in certain ways. The other painting is these kind of goofy paintings of businessmen, and businessmen have been a recurring theme in a lot of my work throughout the years, just because I think they kind of represent a certain way of looking at the world. I also made a bunch of paintings based upon dreams. As you can see in the top left here is a drawing I did of a Mercedes with a giant hood ornament on it. And in that painting, or in that drawing, I would just wake up and I would draw my dream as soon as I woke up. The other one is about a keyboard trying to talk to a computer. I had a dream about these two entities trying to communicate with each other unsuccessfully. And I also made a bunch of paintings based on movies and films. So in the bottom right, you've got Tom Cruise from Top Gun, of course, and did a series of still lifes from Top Gun, actually. And then I started looking more at just paintings of how we look at technology. As you can tell by the age of this phone in this painting on the top left, the phone is, ancient. It's probably 2008 or something like that. So the way we're looking at phones, the way we're constructing our identities based around them. The other painting is of some chemtrails. So it's basically like you might see kind of an idyllic suburban sort of scene. But based upon what we read online now, we can also see these things as chemtrails, which are, government programs using fighter jets to try and control the masses. There's an interesting thing about that with gang stalking, where they say that gang stalking isn't a lot of people see it. There are people that think that they're being stalked by a gang, but a lot of people think they're schizophrenic, but really they're not schizophrenic. They have a community of other people who believe the same thing. And these two paintings here are from pornography images, and then I removed all the people. I did a series of these paintings as well, just focusing on the interiors without people in them. And we can kind of imagine what was going on in these rooms. But a lot of these were kind of creepy because you realize how many of these rooms take on a kid-like feel to them. In the center video here, I'm looking at this book, which was this book all about computer graphics, but it's about 15 years old, so it's completely obsolete. It doesn't make any sense. And I was imagining reading it as some sort of sacred text, like if human civilization was wiped out and they only had this book, what they'd have to try to figure out, because it doesn't really make any sense. It was written many years ago, and it was also published only in India. So the English is a little bit different than normal as well, so it's extremely incomprehensible. I also made these paintings based on video games, which were just first-person shooter games, and these were people, just inhabiting virtual maps online. And I spent a lot of time playing Counter-Strike myself, which is a first-person shooter game that involves a team of other players that have to plant a bomb or deactivate a bomb. And so that's the goal of the game. And having spent so much time in that world, I began painting it. In these paintings, I made some paintings based upon, the top left is a German kid screaming at his computer. And this was a video of a kid who couldn't load his video game. And then he smashed his computer. And a lot of people watched it and laughed at it. And the bottom one is of the Techno Viking, and I was featured on a pretty big blog a few years ago, and as a result, my site had a video of this guy named the Techno Viking. He got super famous, and the case got blown out of proportion. It went all the way to the Supreme Court in Germany. based upon what you can if you can film somebody in public in privacy. And Technoviking actually won. You can't publish somebody else's video of them online without their permission in Germany now. So this top painting is a watercolor I did of signing into a Gmail account. And I was doing a lot of paintings actually of the computer for a while. And the bottom painting is of Ankomaus. And Ankomaus, Donna Haraway writes about Ankomaus as well. But Ankomaus is the first animal patent. It was the first patent on an animal, so there's the patent number up in the top right corner. It was the first patented animal. It's born with cancer, so it's made only for cancer research. So they're born with cancer. In these drawings, the top left one, I was, for a period of time, drawing until I'd fall asleep every night. And I would draw while I was sleeping as well. And so I would have these little note cards by my bed and markers. And as I fell asleep, like with my eyes closed, I'd make these drawings on the markers as I was going to sleep. And then underneath that is the Zelda regeneration with the fairy thing, where again, I'm just looking at screens and the abstract nature of these screens themselves. Center video is of my studio. I've also been making a lot of these videos where I compile a lot of videos together. That's something I do with video quite a bit. I just take a lot of little snippets and then put them all together. And this is just of the sun in my studio, that video there. Eventually I started making these paintings of heads, these exploding heads. And I think a lot of it initially came from this kind of cartoony look at the world and a scrambled head and trying to make faces that couldn't be read by facial detection software. So often face recognition software, which works very well now, they can just point a camera at this room and see if anybody has warrants. It works very well, and it's been integrated with glasses, so you can literally wear glasses and look at somebody and see if they're a criminal or not. So these programs often use scanning of the face in order to work. So a lot of these paintings are about scrambling that, making the face indecipherable, impossible to read by a machine itself, but also the amorphous nature of our identity as it gets pulled into this digital realm, and what is left of humans if we truly are in a time of late humanity and we're absolutely unprepared for super intelligent AI and what's to come, as many are saying. Where does that leave humanity? Where does that leave people? How will we think about ourselves when computers can think about pretty much anything far better than us? And there's a lot of people that want to say, hey, it's far way off. It might be a far way off, but it's going to be a fundamental shift, which I think is going to really reshape the way the world is looked at, especially with things like augmented reality and mixed reality, which is taking reality and adding something to it instead of just wearing a viewfinder, an Oculus. So I guess you can see in the left painting, I'm incorporating a little bit more pattern, but the figure itself is breaking apart farther and farther. At first glance, you probably wouldn't even see the figure present in this work, but it's still hiding out there somewhere. You can kind of see an indication of a shoulder there. And again, I've made around 140 of these heads now, and they're all getting choppier and choppier. I did do a series where you could kind of see eyes and make out certain features, make them a little bit more human, so people could grasp onto a little bit more. I use the airbrush a lot in painting, often right on top of oil paint, and then I'll repaint edges so I can make a blend and then crisp up one edge as well. This is some footage from the video. I got a grant to work on this video over the summer about the North Dakota landscape. So on the left you see some footage from that. I just made it into strips. And I also use the laser cutter and cut out different wood patterns, different grid patterns, and I can even, prepare patterns directly for paintings and stencils for paintings. Did all these exploding blobby houses back in the day, where these houses were just exploding with blobbiness. I think, there's an inherent surreal feel to blobs. When I was really little, I used to have all these dreams just about this big gray blob that was taking over the city. Here you can see, the biometric elements of these paintings that are made a little bit more apparent. There's a biometric scan of my face, and then converted into those basic points and how they construct the face. I'll put it down as a sticker, then I'll paint the entire painting, and I'll pull off the decal and leave that white biometric. Here's the opposite of that approach on the left, where the face or the head is that blob of meat in digital biometrics. And then I made that kind of pretty little rainbow crashing back into the background. In the middle, you can see one of my machines. I have a lot of different machines I use in painting. That was the turkey knife. Here we've got a close-up of the turkey knife in action, popping over the painting. On the left, we're really simplifying the blobs down into simple shapes. This is polyurethane, oil paint, and spray paint in order to make that. In the bottom middle, we have the bottle ball, where I've just outfitted a ball with a lot of different brushes on it. And then that ball, as you can see, hops all over the painting. And with these, you can think about automatic drawing and automatic painting. That was often employed by surrealists to get into the subconscious and these sort of things. On the right, I painted this wooden piece of wood I found in the garbage, and then was kind of singing to that. On the left, you can see landscape with a bunch of oil paint which has been laid down, and then I'm using a comb to comb out all these areas within the paint. And you can see that even these simple lines, they're called Moira patterns. If you put two of them on top of each other, they get very psychedelic very fast. Currently, a lot of my work is just exploding more and more. I think I've reached the point where it's just became completely explosive. And so lately I've been pulling it back, making them more like characters, and bringing them back into humanity, which is really at the core of what I'm interested in. It's not computers. I don't think it's cool that our bodies are becoming cyborgs. I think it's important to hold on to what we've got and humanity